G'day and Kaya, and welcome to the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners, with language learners, for language learners. My name is Glenn, and I'm the host of the Australians Teach English podcast. And if you would like to support this project, then you can at patreon.com/Australians Teach English, where you'll get bonus content, exclusive content, and express releases from all of these shows, and have a say in the creative process as well. And a fair while ago, I got in contact with our next guest, and I wanted her to come on the show. I've been wanting her to come on the show for quite a while, and she said, "No, I'm too busy training, can't do it." And I thought, okay, yep, that's all good. All good, I understand. And then she went and did something special, and then I had to wait even longer because her feet didn't touch the ground for such a long, long time. She was up in the clouds, thinking about everything else, celebrating, doing all the rest. And so I'm absolutely over the moon to have one of my heroes on the show. It's not every day I get to interview someone like this. So if I'm nervous during the show, then you all understand. But our next guest, Ella Sabljak, she is a two-time Paralympian. She's an educator. She's on the board of WADA as an athlete representative, and she's an extremely proud wearer of the green and gold. So welcome to the show, Ella.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I feel like, since we had that first contact, it's just been, I felt like yesterday almost that you reached out. So I feel a little bit bad coming on, but we're here and
we got here eventually, yeah, and in pretty good circumstances as well. So Ella, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and how you came to be wearing the green and gold?
Yeah, so I am a female. I've got brown hair and brown eyes. I was about to say blue eyes. I do not have blue eyes. And I played wheelchair rugby in Paris in 2024 at the Paralympic Games, and we won a bronze medal, or as we like to call it, a rose gold. But previously, before wheelchair rugby, I started my career back in Victoria, in Melbourne, and I was a wheelchair basketball player. So I played wheelchair basketball for Victoria. I was selected for the junior team, and I quickly rose up through the ranks of the wheelchair basketball community to be then on the gliders. So the gliders are our Australian women's wheelchair basketball team, and went along the journey, went to Tokyo for the Paralympic Games with the gliders. And then in 2022, after the Commonwealth Games, I changed sports to wheelchair rugby. So it's been a journey. It's been a long career. And that's how I'm here representing Australia over 10 plus years.
Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit how you got involved in wheelchair sports?
Absolutely. So I think I got involved when I was about 2 years old. And if you know wheelchair sports at all, it's quite hard to come across a local club. So we had to travel quite a distance to play wheelchair basketball. And I was quite young and just thrown in with the other guys that were playing. And I had a lot of fun. But unfortunately, I couldn't compete, or I couldn't keep playing because it was quite a way out of, my mum's way. And I had my siblings at home, so it became quite a journey. So we kind of put that on pause for a little bit until I was about 15, 16 years old, where I was re-engaged in the sporting world. And I then started to do wheelchair athletics and just going around and around in a circle on a track in a chair that was too small for me. I had bruises all up my body. And I just really wasn't enjoying it. It was an individual sport, not really for me. And then I went back to wheelchair basketball because the program or the community that I was associated with, they were, they did athletics and they had wheelchair basketball and they did a few other para sports. And so I went down for a social comp to play wheelchair basketball and then, yeah, loved it. Well, that's my story. Until very recently, I reconnected with one of the ladies that was one of the carers and siblings of one of the athletes. And she said to me that they had to drag me to wheelchair basketball and I didn't want to go and I didn't want to play. So, and I don't remember that. And I was quite shocked when she said that. I was like, oh, well, look at me now. Can't keep me away.
Yeah, so did you know from a young age like that you actually wanted to be involved in wheelchair sport, in parasport, or was it something that you just fell into?
A little bit of both. I think the Sydney Paralympic Games had a big part in highlighting and amplifying the Paralympic movement. And I think we saw athletes like Louise Savage, Kurt Fernley, they were doing incredible things. I don't remember watching much of it. I remember having a teacher who promoted it in the classroom and I did a little project on Louise Savage. But then in playing it, I don't think those timelines really added up together. And I always knew that I wanted to do something because I always felt so excluded at school in, all the running activities and netball or even playing on the playground. I knew there was something else for me. As a kid, you don't really have much of a clue. So I wish the timelines kind of worked a little bit better together. And, we took the Paralympic Games that was Sydney and, ran with that a bit more. So, yeah, a little bit of both.
It's interesting that you mentioned the legend that is Louise Savage. I mean, I was lucky enough when I was a kid, my brother was involved in sort of like different elite athletics streams here in Perth. And so we would go to Perry Lakes quite often and she would be doing lap after lap after lap. And she was just a machine and everyone sort of held her in extremely high regard. Although, being a young kid at the time, I sort of had no real awareness of what that meant. But she also had a reputation of being quite a difficult person as well. And that's probably yeah. And that's probably because, I mean, her whole stick was, well, you got to treat me like an elite athlete. And she was probably Western Australia's best elite athlete that we've just about ever produced, I think. And she probably did more for disabled people in Australia than just about any other single person. And it's not really a surprise to see Madison de Rosario, who is also from Perth, kind of also taking on that mantle as well. And she's, Louise's protege and is coached by Louise. So it's not really a surprise to see that.
No, and Louise, it's funny you say that because Louise is one of the most humble people that I've ever met. She was in Paris as Madison's coach and she just, does her job, does it really well, demands excellence, but is so lovely and so, like I said, humble. Like she doesn't want any attention. She doesn't want, the spotlight on her. But yeah, she's so lovely.
And do you guys, as para athletes, do you have an awareness of what you actually sort of represent for the disabled community, or are you sort of a bit kind of removed from that?
I think it kind of depends, who you are and the impact that you can have on your community. I think people love to see and champion athletes, and recently, with the growth of parasport in Australia and the media attention that our athletes are getting, we are becoming, role models through that. I don't think we think that we're role models at all. Like, somebody said to me the other day, thank you for being such a great role model for all the, young women in Australia and whatever else. I was like, what am I doing? How am I doing? I'm just out here having fun playing rugby and, you know, um, doing what I want to do and enjoying that. And if we can bring people along the journey, jump on. I'm all for that. But I think it happens vicariously, and it's not really a conscious thing. But I mean, we've got incredible athletes like Madison De Rosario, who uses her platform for that, and Reed McCracken as well. I've seen them all just be absolute superstars in their field and promoting the Paralympic movement. And yeah, we are getting fans and people on board, and they're loving it.
Well, my own little story with this is when I had my accident in 2022. My last couple of weeks in intensive care, or probably my last week in intensive care, was the first week of the Birmingham Paralympics. And so when I would go to, well, I was already in bed, I couldn't get out of bed in ICU, but when I would go to sleep at night, I would go to sleep with the Paralympics on, and I would see athletes like Madison, and I would just be thinking, oh, how is she pushing this hard when I can't even sit up for 5 minutes without passing out or falling asleep? And so it gave me like a huge motivation to actually recover, to get better. And I guarantee that there would have been people around the world doing the same thing with the Paralympics as well, seeing these athletes, showing that there is actually a better life for them past that the worst moment in their life. So I think whether Paralympians or para-athletes in general kind of realize that they are providing those kind of role models and that kind of example to do better.
That's an incredible story. I think it's pretty similar to Kurt McGrath's story as well. I'm not sure if you've heard Curtis speak, but he says in one of his talks that when he had his legs blown off in Afghanistan, but when he was being taken to hospital, he saw the Paralympic Games on the TV, and he said, I'm going to be a Paralympian, literally as he was being airflown to hospital. And it is that power of, well, if you can't see it, you can't be it as well. And being able to provide everybody with that motivator. I mean, if it happens.
Yeah, and it's not even about becoming a para athlete or becoming, a representative wearing the green and gold or anything like that. It's about, doing as much as you possibly can, being as good as you possibly can. It really doesn't matter if you win gold, silver, or come 20th. It really is irrelevant at that point in time. And I think that is perhaps something that is so fantastic about the Paralympics. It seems to me like for a lot of the athletes, it really isn't just about winning. Well, it's not about winning. It is actually about that sort of community spirit. It has a completely different vibe to it than the normal Olympics. Is that a true perception, or is that how it actually is?
I think that's actually how it is. I think we are, we're such a family, and it is, yeah, hard to explain. It's really hard to explain how the Paralympics makes you feel like when you're in it. I think we're all just there trying our best, like you said, and the vibes are good. We all get around each other. We laugh at each other. We cry with each other. We're there and we're supporting each other, no matter what. So I love our little parasport community.
And I think what probably a lot of people don't realize is that with a lot of the sports, it comes down to how you are classified as well. So it's not ever going to be a like versus like, to use a better term, competition, because there's always going to be differences and slight differences between two athletes, even if they have a similar level of injury or a similar level of functional or whatever. No two disabilities are quite the same. And so a lot of athletes will be aware of the other athletes' injuries and disabilities. And so I think there's a lot of mutual respect that goes on because of that. And I remember talking to one of the young rugby players here in Western Australia, and we were chatting and saying, well, I really hope that Australia wins the wheelchair rugby, but it's hard to barrack against some of the other teams, because we know their stories, we see them on Instagram and whatever, and we actually really, really like them as people as well. So it does sort of have that different vibe to it as well, which is really, really nice. And
Yeah, it is. Classification, that is, it's so individual. It's such an individual thing and journey. So
mm. So with wheelchair rugby, what got you into wheelchair rugby instead of playing wheelchair basketball?
good question. It is, oh, it was really luck of the draw. I didn't really want to play wheelchair rugby. We have a pathways guy who is specifically like trying to find athletes to come and play wheelchair rugby, and he was calling me after Tokyo going, come and play wheelchair rugby, and I was like, no, leave me alone, I want to play basketball. And this is all I want to do. I'm not a rugby player. And I was kind of like, no, leave me alone, leave me alone. And then on the Gold Coast, I live on the Gold Coast, that we had national championships here a couple of years ago in 2022. And they rang me, they said, Ella, we need you to fill in it. Just come on, give it a go. Get classified. What's the worst that can happen? We also need you to fill in a spot because a few people have pulled out because they're unwell. And so I was like, okay, sure. I've got a free weekend. Jumped in a chair that was so small for me. I was twisted. It didn't fit me right. Had this long pick bar on the front of the chair, and I had never used a pick bar before, because in basketball we don't have pick bars on chairs. We just have like a rounded front. And so I was just like navigating this space, and I was like, it's essentially, if I can read the play, which I can, if I can push a chair, I can pass a ball. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, I just need to figure out like the nuanced rules, which at the time I was like, okay, so you just put the ball on your lap and push. Sure. And I did that, because in basketball you have to have, there's two pushes and a bounce, or two pushes or two touches of your wheel, bounce, pass, or shoot. In rugby, to me at the time, it just seemed like you put the ball on your lap and do whatever you want with the ball. But it's 10 seconds, and I learned that the hard way. The ref called me for a travel, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, what? So yeah, there was a lot of nuanced rules that I had to quickly figure out this competition in Div 2. But it was really fun, and we ended up like winning. And yeah, the coaches pulled me aside, and I later found out that they were told that they were to go easy on me and just asked me very gently if I'd like to come and play. But they were very forceful. They were saying they wanted me on the team. They were like, we want to take you away to this tournament, blah, blah, blah. And it was right before the World Championships. And it so happened that the time that they wanted me was a couple of days after the Commonwealth Games had finished. So we finished up at the Commonwealth Games, and instead of coming back to Australia, I flew to Italy to meet the team, start a new sport, and yeah, the rest is history. So originally I was very reluctant to play wheelchair rugby. Had a
Why?
free weekend.
Why
Jumped
were
in.
you reluctant though?
I think the years the wheelchair rugby team, they had a lot of attention. They got a lot of media, and we have like some high profile athletes like Riley Batt and Chris Bond, and our low points are insane. Um, and whenever I'd say I play wheelchair basketball, they're like, I've never seen wheelchair basketball. I've only seen wheelchair rugby. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, come watch wheelchair basketball. And so it was a little bit like, no, we're not. I'm not a wheelchair rugby player. I'm a wheelchair basketball player the misconceptions um, around wheelchair sports. And originally, it was a pretty male dominated space as well. If it wasn't for Shay, so Shay Graham was the first female player to play wheelchair rugby for Australia. Um, if it wasn't for Shay on the team in Tokyo, I don't think I would have even said yes. So she was there, and I was excited to spend time with her because I knew her socially. But yeah, I'm glad I took the leap. I'm glad I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
So for us listeners out there, can you explain a little bit about wheelchair rugby and why it is unique, why it is special, and perhaps why you became addicted to this sport?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people associate wheelchair rugby with what it used to be called as murder ball. So it used to be known as murder ball, which, I mean, the name speaks for itself. It's a full contact sport. We have chairs that are built like cages, and we go full contact against each other. So there are rules though, which I learned out. You're not allowed to hit people behind the axle or hit people hard behind the chair.
I did that in wheelchair basketball once and flipped someone over.
Yeah, it's called a fifth wheel in basketball.
And
Quite
spinning in wheelchair rugby, is that right?
yeah, spin. So it's quite dangerous. And so yeah, the rules are pretty fast paced. Up and back, you push the ball over the line. There's a goal. There's two goals at each end. Or there's a goal at each end, sorry. And you have to score by pushing the ball over the try line or the goals. But in between that, it's like a game of chess. We have going back to classification. We have players classified from 0.5 to a 3.5. So a 3.5 player is somebody on the court who has the most function. And as it goes down to a 0.5, they are athletes who have the highest level of impairment. So a high level spinal cord break. They have limited function of their hands and arms. I don't know the ins and outs of the classification on whether, they've got bicep or tricep or this or that or whatever it is. But I sit somewhere in the middle and I'm a 2.5 classified player. So
But you
a
get
2.5.
but you get a discount for being a woman, and this is what makes wheelchair rugby especially unique, though, doesn't it?
We get a bonus, we like to say.
A
So
bonus.
a team gets a bonus for every female on the court, and that means that instead of playing to 8 points, we can play to 8.5 for one female. You can play to 9 for two females, 9.5 for three, and then 10 for, if I've done my math correctly there, 10 points for four female players on the court. So Australia was the first team last year, I believe. We went to New Zealand and we had the very first all-female team on the floor. So we played myself, Shay Graham, Robin Lambert, and Lil from WA, and they dominated. Like, we tore it up. So the advantages of having that is function. So the more function you have on the floor, the better it is. So
But this also is is what I'm getting at in terms of wheelchair rugby being special. It's the only sport that I know of that is a mixed gendered full contact sport. Is there anything else in the world like that you know of?
Not that I know of, not full contact. I know there are other mixed gendered sports in the Paralympic Games as well, but or mixed gendered competitions, but not full contact. So I think it is really special and really unique. I think some of the guys think that they can hit me harder, or they get a shock if I hit them really hard. And then sometimes, they'll just target me because I'm a girl or whatever, but I'll outsmart them. So it's really, it's really a game of chess and cat and mouse. So, I mean, I enjoy the little mind games that I have with them. I don't know if they know that they're having them with me, having them. But yeah.
And to be classified in wheelchair rugby, you have to have some kind of impairment that affects four limbs. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So you have four limbs affected. And then there's a minimal criteria to that as well. So you could have four limbs affected, but you may not meet the minimal impairment criteria, which people have been classed out of wheelchair rugby because they've got four limbs that are affected, but not to the greatest extent. So
yeah, so high functioning quadriplegics and things like this would not necessarily qualify.
well, potentially, you never know, but there are amputees that aren't missing enough fingers, or
Yeah,
things like that
yeah,
unfortunately they don't classify, but they can always play wheelchair basketball.
yeah.
Um, but yeah.
And so you're in what we call an ambulant wheelchair user. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So I use a wheelchair sometimes, depending on how my feet are feeling, my balance. But yeah, it's generally just day by day.
Yeah. So how has that sort of been in your life where you might use a wheelchair, but people see you walking around or whatever and then say you shouldn't be using a wheelchair? Have you ever had that experience?
No, but I'd like somebody to say that to me.
So that you can start an argument with them.
Yeah. No, you
Yeah.
just raise awareness around disability and how it's nuanced and it's all individualized. More an education piece.
Mm.
But no one's really questioned it. I often think that you often think about that, like, people think I'm faking my disability, or,
Mm.
this and that, but it's so individualized, especially when you're an ambulant wheelchair user. There are some days where I'm like, yep, I can quickly, run into the shops and grab what I need. And there are other days where I'm like, I actually need to just sit on the couch and put my feet up because
Mm.
I can't walk and I need, a chair to get around the house.
Mm.
But it's just day by day.
This was a really big eye opener for me because even before my accident, I worked with the disabled in Argentina, and one of my students there in my English classes, he was a quadriplegic. But when I actually asked what was his disability, I was quite shocked because he said, "Well, I'm a quadriplegic," and I said, "Well, um, but you don't have a wheelchair; you walk everywhere." And so I was quickly educated on the fact that there are complete and incomplete spinal cord injuries, and the fact that even if you are a quadriplegic, you can actually be ambulant for most of the time, for example, and a lot of other disabilities are the same. But I was totally ignorant. I just thought, okay, he must have cerebral palsy or something like that, and that's just what I assumed. And it didn't really make any difference to me because he was still the same guy. But I was just quite surprised and sort of really even shocked with my own ignorance. And then when it came to having a spinal cord injury myself, and then having to educate other people, and when you tell people, well, I'm not going to be walking again, and then people saying, well, I've got this person on my Instagram that had a spinal cord injury and is walking now and blah blah blah, and you're just being negative and all the rest. It's quite a yeah, it's quite a stressful experience actually having to tell people, well, actually, there's whole different range of injuries here, and what you see on Instagram and social media and whatnot is not necessarily the same case for everyone. So you don't actually know their circumstances at all. So even for someone like myself that I would consider relatively well educated on things, there are things that really do open your eyes about disability. And I think the ambulant wheelchair users do often have it a lot tougher, because often people just won't actually see that you are disabled and in need of different things.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I like to yeah, I like to think of as it's disability is so strange. And I don't have a spinal cord injury. I was born with my condition, so my condition is Charcot-Marie-Tooth. Um and it still affects my nerves, but in a more of a peripheral sense. And I like to describe it to kids as, if you've got an electrical cable and you cut it, the toaster won't turn on,
Mm,
so or the kettle won't boil. So it's kind of like that with this with a spinal cord injury as well. Like you can have a cable that can be taped together a little bit, and
mm,
the function can still be there, but it may not be as fast or as powerful. But you can have a cable that's completely cut and severed and no messages are getting through. So it's such an educational piece around it. And I'm still learning. I still learn every day around different disabilities and different functions. And I'm still surprised that some of my teammates, one day I'd never seen them standing before, and the next thing they're walking into training, and I was like, "What are you doing? Where's a chair?"
Yeah, I used to have this joke with this quadriplegic in the spinal ward, and he would do his walking exercises, and I would jokingly say to him, "Look, mate, you don't belong here." And he would laugh and he would say, "Well, I can't cut my food, because he didn't have any hand function." And he said, "Well, I'll trade you your legs for my hands." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not sure about that one." So like there are all these sorts of different unpredictable outcomes and things that don't often make a lot of sense. Um, and yeah, you just
Which
got
is
to.
fine. It doesn't have to make sense.
No, that's right. That's right. Like, and I think, especially with spinal cord injuries and us as spinal cord patients talking to our doctors, we get used to being told we don't know, we can't explain that,
Yeah.
and it's the same with a lot of sort of neuro injuries, and sort of like the neuropathic kind of symptoms that you're explaining there. And a lot of people that have gone through different like chemotherapy treatment or cancer treatment often experience similar things with loss of function in their hands or their legs, and they're not really aware of why that happens. And that can be actually a common symptom of different cancer treatments as well. So
Even
yeah.
my nana has diabetes, and she's developed a neurological um condition. I don't know. Her hands are similar to my hands, or they're actually a lot worse than my hands. So, there's so many different things out there that can affect people's function in
Mm,
multiple different ways. So,
mm.
yeah,
and
it's
as
really
and as people say in the disability space, we're all just temporarily abled. At one at some point in time, you are going to lose some function. If you live long enough, that's just the way that it is. And all of this is a part of education. And going back to your role as an educator, can you tell us about what you do representing the green and gold, going into schools and educating kids? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for our Paralympic organization, and we we take Paralympians and para-athletes out into schools, primary and secondary, and we use our Paralympians to educate everybody around, the Paralympic movement, and about creating awareness and inclusion for people with a disability. And it's not focused on disability, and we're not highlighting that. We're highlighting this incredible athlete's achievements and look what they've done. Like their disability is just a bit of a sideshow, it's their like a side quest to their life of representing Australia in the Paralympic Games, or in whatever capacity they've represented Australia in. So we do that into schools, and we get kids are so curious and they ask lots of questions, and it's all about building that empathy piece in the students. So if they can see, maybe we might have to walk the long way around and knock up the stairs because my friend can't walk upstairs. And if we can bring a champion athlete into their school to spread that message, maybe a different way, maybe their teacher's been telling them a million times to be a bit more inclusive and understanding, but if we can bring a champion athlete in, they can hear it from somebody else, then, we're doing our job, and hopefully in turn, reducing bullying for children with a disability, and also that the social emotional piece that comes with understanding disability is massive. And like I said, we use the Paralympic movement to teach that and to build resilience and understand what it is. So yeah, that's my 9 to 5.
And then you also have a role with WADA. What is your role with WADA? And can you explain what WADA is?
So the World Anti-Doping Agency. WADA.
Yeah, you had to think about that one, didn't you?
I do, because I don't often say the full name. It's always the acronym. But yeah, with WADA, it's the World Anti-Doping Agency, and they write all the policies for doping in sport and making sure that sport is clean and a fair playing field for everybody. And I sit on that as a athlete rep from Australia, and it is so interesting. There's a few para athletes on there, and they're all very different, come from different parts of the world, but majority Olympic or non-disabled sport athletes. And it's all about understanding what the anti-doping system is, and they'll bring things to us, and we'll provide an athlete perspective. And often, we're the only ones in the room that'll bring up, what about Paralympic sport? Have we spoken to the IPC on this? What's the relationship there? And often, sometimes they have been thought of, sometimes they haven't, but it's just being the voice in the room to speak about the Paralympic movement and our Paralympic athletes. So that's that. And yeah, I really enjoy it. So I've got to put another application in to be re-voted in, which I will do very shortly, because that date is coming up too soon.
And so coming back to this term green and gold, what does the green and gold, and what does wearing the green and gold mean to you?
It's really funny, because you have lots of conversations around, why are we wearing green and gold? What does that mean? And, our flag isn't green and gold. But it's, the wattle tree that is so beautiful. And we've seen it flourishing up here. Well, I've seen it in Queensland during the games as well. And it's it's a native tree to Australia. And it's such a beautiful tree in the color, and I really love that we have chosen those colors as our Australian colors. It's so bright, and you can't miss us if you're in a crowd. Like, where are the Australians? Oh, there they are, bright, they stick out. So wearing the green and gold, I don't think I could ever put into words the honour of representing Australia and doing that with the teams that I have done. I'm so proud of being Australian and being, you know, it being a small part of my journey. Yeah, I could never, every time we put on a jersey, I just, goosebumps. I love it. It's just such a good feeling. And the words, I don't think I could ever do it justice.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So you got the idea that the wattle tree is the reason why our national colours are the yellow and green. So
I hope
yeah, yeah, you got
so.
that. You got that correct. That was good.
Pass
But
that, pass that
so
one.
people might query, well, why aren't we like wearing the colors of our flag? And well, the reason is because our colors are green and gold, like the wattle tree. But it might have been a little bit different. Do you know why we started wearing the green and gold rather than any other colors apart from the wattle?
No, I don't know.
So
Was it a
we
competition?
no, it wasn't a competition, not like Vegemite or something like that. No, but because we had Australian representative teams from Australia before we were actually a nation, so we didn't actually have a flag when we started actually competing as Australia. So we had to have some kind of national symbol that represented everyone from Australia. And although the actual specific colors of the green and gold, that the uniforms and so on, and even the colors for my podcast and whatever are based on these colors of one specific wattle tree. The wattle tree, the acacia, is grows all around Australia in different forms, different species, and whatnot. So because of that, they decided to use the colors of this tree that could be seen all around Australia. And it wasn't until much later that we had the Australian flag and that we actually became a federation in our own country. So for that reason, we have like the baggy green for the Australian cricket teams, men and women. That was perhaps our first actual national team. And that was the reason why we wear the baggy green cap and have green and gold as our national colours.
Amazing. Do you know what year that was? Do you know what year we first competed in green and gold?
Yeah, about 1870 off the top of my head.
Long
I can't.
before our time.
Yeah, well before our time and decades before like Australia was an actual country.
Yeah.
And even longer before we had our national flag. So I think for quite a long time we just had the Union Jack as our flag as well. I don't know exactly the year that changed to the flag that we have currently.
Amazing. I never knew that. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, it is an interesting one because the green cap is an interesting one because I teach a lot of Chinese students and they have a thing about the green hats, and to them it means that your partner is cheating on you if you're wearing a green hat. So I showed one of my Chinese friends a picture of the Australian cricket team all wearing their green hats. And I said to them, if you saw these guys, what would you think? And she said, they're all nice guys, but they have relationship troubles. And I said, well, yeah, kind of. A lot of them probably do actually have relationship troubles, but not because they're wearing a baggy green cap. But anyway, that's a little bit of trivia for everyone out there. So what's next on the horizon for Ella?
Well, I'm officially taking some time away from sport. It's been a long time involved in high performance sport. So I just need a break. I just need to not be anywhere, not to be held, accountable to anybody and training and early mornings, late nights. It has definitely taken a toll on me and my body, and I'm exhausted, and my career as well. Like I want to advance my career and spend some time actually earning money. um so yeah, I just taking some time away, um which I'm very, very grateful for being able to do this. But yeah, that's it really. Then Christmas. New Year's
and then
2025. I don't
and then
know.
you'll see where you go from there.
Yeah, I don't want to throw the R word out there, the retirement word, but I am looking, it is looking like that. I just, you don't know. I don't know. I like, maybe I'll miss it. Maybe I won't miss it. Only time will tell. So I'm just,
I'm sure you're going to get dragged back into something for 2032. There's going to be one team that needs a player doing something, and I'm sure
I hope
they're going.
not. Uh,
I think
I
by
hope
that
I'll be on the side drinking a beer or something with being a mad supporter, getting around to Australian teams. So I hope that's where I'll be in
well,
32.
I think that's sort of another thing about you though as well. I think you're one of our main cheerleaders of the Australian Paralympic team as well. So, and you taking a break mainly from your celebrations rather than your training, as far as I could see. They were pretty they were pretty good celebrations. So
Yeah, they were very they were needed. They were,
they were needed. Yeah, I think so. I think so. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Ella. Someone that is a very proud wearer of the green and gold, and to talk a little bit about your experiences wearing the green and gold and why we have the green and gold to begin with. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you all the best on your future endeavors, whatever that happens to be.
yeah, thank you so much. Thank
Not
you.
a
It's been a
problem.
pleasure being here with you.
Not a problem. Not a problem. And when you're in Western Australia, when you come over to Perth next time, then we'll go and
Yeah.
celebrate some more, maybe. So
Perfect. Thank
so
you.
from us here at the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners, with language learners, for language learners, saying goodbye, hooroo, have a good one.
Hooroo.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and share it with anyone who might benefit from listening. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Australians Teach English.